Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisance of Soul Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees on this most auspicious day in the month of Kartik, the disappearance of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
It's a wonderful, blessed day. It's a wonderful day that all devotees come together, especially initiated devotees, because we are part of Srila Prabhupada's disciplic succession, the Parampara system. And it's a wonderful day also for those who are aspiring, those who love Prabhupada, those who have an interest in what Prabhupada has brought to this part of the world. So we will start this auspicious day with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse 19. The chapter is entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home. The class will be given by His Grace Parikshit Prabhu from ISKCON Harrisburg. Without further delay, we will go into the class. Hari Bol.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Vivadadadi. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Vivadadadi. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Rajajanarangana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Sharadhyari Radha Sharadhyari Shri Hare Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Hare Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhans Privajika Chacha Stotra Sata Sri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhans Privajika Chacha Stotra Sata Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Charya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Cham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Pramanande, Haribo, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Guru Nanak. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati. Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Chittapani. Sri Guru Karuna Shakti Bhakti. Narayana Namaste Naronchevam Narotamam. Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tuchojayam Udirayat. Nastapayiswa Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavata Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees. The Pramala basis is called Srila Prabhupada. This morning, Srimad Bhagavatam, as was said earlier, is from Canto 1, Chapter 13, which is entitled Dhritarashtra Quits Home, text 19. Pratikriya nayasyeha kutaschit kahichit prabho sa isan bhagavan kala sarveshamna samagata. Pratikriya nayasyeha Kutaschit Kahichit Prabhu Sa Isa Bhagavan Kala Sarvesham Na Samagata Pratikriya Nayasyeha Kutaschit Kahichit Prabhu Sa Isa Bhagavan Kala Sarvesham Samagata. Hare Krishna.
Pratikriyana yasyeha kutaschit karhichit prabhu sa isha bhagavan kala sarvesham na samagata. Hare Krishna.
प्रतिक्रियान यस्यः कुतचित् कर्हिचित् प्रभो स एष भगवान् कालः सर्वेषां नः समागतः. हरे कृष्ण.
प्रतिक्रिया न यस्यः कुतश्चित् कर्हिचित् प्रभो सा एषा भगवान् काला सर्वेषां नः समागता. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, word for word. Pratikriya, remedial measure. Now there is none. Yasya, of which. Iha, in this material world. Kutaschit, by any means. Kahichit, or by anyone. Prabhu, O my Lord. Sa, that. Esha, positively. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Kala, eternal time. Salvation of all. Na, of us. Samagata, arrived. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time, Kala, that has approached us all. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There is no superior power that can check the cruel hands of death. No one wants to die, however acute the source of bodily sufferings may be. Even in the days of so-called scientific advancement of knowledge, there is no remedial measure either for old age or for death. Old age is the notice of the arrival of death served by cruel time, and no one can refuse to accept either summon, call, or the supreme judgment of eternal time. It is explained, or this is explained before Dhritarashtra, because he might ask Vidura to find out some remedial measure for the imminent fearful situation, as he had ordered many times before. Before ordering, however, Vidura informed Dhritarashtra that there was no remedial measure by anyone or from any source in this material world. And because there is no such thing in the material world, death is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as it is said by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 34. Death cannot be checked by anyone or from any source within this material world. Hiranyakashipu wanted to be immortal and underwent a severe type of penance by which the whole universe trembled, and Brahma himself approached him to dissuade Hiranyakashipu from such a severe type of penance. Hiranyakashipu asked Brahma to award him the blessings of immortality. But Brahma said that he himself was subject to death, even in the topmost planet. So how can he award him the benediction of immortality? So there is death even in the topmost planet of this universe. And what to speak of other planets, which are far, far inferior in quality to Brahmaloka, the residing planet of Brahma. Wherever there is the influence of eternal time, there is this set of tribulations, namely birth, disease, old age, and death. And all of them are invincible. Om Gnati Virandasya Gyana Gyanashamakaya Chakshu Umbilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Vidati Swapadhatikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Gita Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Sri Rupa Sagajatam Sahagana Rupunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Javapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Pishabhanu Sute Devi Panamani Hari Priya Vanchaka Patrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirveshesha Sunyavari Paschatya Dishitarine Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Guratashe Namo Ananda Lila Maya Vigrahaya Himadya Divacha Vishundaraya Tasmi Mahaprema Raspadaya Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandaya Namo Namaste Hare Krishna. So the English translation of this text is, this frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in the material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time, Kala, that has approached us all. These are the words of Vidura, the brother of Dhritarashtra, who was Yamaraj himself that had come to the material world because he wanted to get an opportunity to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Yamaraj, as Krishna would always do to his devotees, was also employed in the situation of the administration by Dhritarashtra. At first he was Pandu, but later on became Dhritarashtra as Pandu left his body in a very unfortunate situation in the forest when he was with his two wives. So now Dhritarashtra has had a chance, and with the kingdom, he ruled in envy of the Pandavas. He wanted his son to be the king, even though Pandu was the king at first, and it was arranged that Pandu, after him, would come the firstborn of his children, the Pandavas. That was Maharaj Yudhishthira. But he never agreed to it. He means Dhritarashtra never agreed to it and wanted Duryodhana, his firstborn, to be the next king. So the situation got dragged on until, this is all explained in Mahabharata, until the war came, and then Dhritarashtra lost all his sons. And now the sons of Pandu are the ones ruling, but Dhritarashtra is still hanging around the palace trying to enjoy. Actually, when Vidura, who was out on pilgrimage, returned to the palace, he returned to pump some sense into Dhritarashtra's head, in an American way of saying it, so that he would have to leave and prepare, because he was already old, and from old age comes death, the next thing. And as Srila Prabhupada has told us, and Krishna has also literally said in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who quits this physical body thinking about Krishna will go to Krishna. It is a very, very important statement that devotees need to remember. This translation here is talking about death. It says it's a frightful situation. First of all, nobody remembers, even if they've been here for millions of lifetimes, nobody remembers how they left the body the last time, so that at least they can be mentally prepared for it. Even if somebody sees another person dying, it's not like they are in their shoes. You can see, but you cannot feel what the person is going through. So really, we don't know. We don't know. It's not part of it's not in our memory bank. And it doesn't, even if it was, it doesn't get called out for us to figure out what's going on. A little bit has been said in the Shastra, though, that when the senses are shutting down, it's difficult. Very, very, very difficult. You're used to smelling, breathing, seeing, and then those things are taken away. One by one, the senses are shutting down. Now, it can be quite disturbing, but this is why it's important to have devotees around you, because the last sense to shut down is the sense of hearing. And when you hear the holy name, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the Yugadam for this age, at the time one is leaving the body, then there's a big chance that by hearing, you'd remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you say, okay, well, there's all this difficulty that death is imposing on me, but I remember Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it is only devotees that will chant the holy name. They know that at that time, you need to remember Krishna so that you can go to Krishna. And so it is very, very important to keep a good relationship, because wherever you are at that time, when the time comes, as Vidura puts it, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time has approached us all, has approached us in the form of death. When that time comes, it is the devotees that think well of you, devotees that you relate well to, that are more than likely going to stop whatever they're doing from wherever they are and come to your bedside, come to the place where you are to chant the holy name so that you can remember Krishna and go to Krishna. The situation has happened before. This is not theoretical at all. There have been people who have left their bodies. There were times then in that situation where they were close to doing that. People, including myself, were there, and all we thought of was chant the holy name. Chant the holy name. There's one Mataji that was part of our congregation. She left the body, but before she did that, we came to the house, we were chanting the holy name. Other relatives were talking to her. She said, no, I want to hear the holy name. Stop, just hear the holy name. And so then arrangement was made to even put an iPod at that time, which takes, records a lot of songs, and only bhajans were being played, all different tunes of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because that's all she wanted to hear. And from what we hear later on after she left the body, she did in fact get Krishna and Guru's mercy and went back to Godhead. This is where the pleasure is. We are leaving a difficult situation in the material world and trying to go back to our original constitutional position, where there is happiness all the time, the highest happiness, which is bliss. So in one sense, the transition to go from a place that's difficult to a place that's pleasurable, we need to look forward to that. The only problem is there is pain associated with it. And everybody that talks about death doesn't talk about it in a wonderful situation. There is some difficulty to the physical body at that time. And that's what Vidura is describing as the frightful situation. And it cannot be remedied by any person in this material world, says Vidura. You, my brother, I know you've been asking all kinds of questions. Half of the questions that you asked for, half the advice, more than half the advice that was given to you, the Dhritarashtra, you never took. But now that the time has come and you are old and therefore death is around the corner, Hmm? You're trying to stay in a place where the people who you arranged to kill are the ones taking care of you. So that's even an embarrassing situation. Hmm? You need to get out of that. So Vidura is explaining, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that there is no superior power that can check the cruel hands of death. That's why they say as sure as death. Hmm? And you can't postpone that time either. No one wants to die, but the acute, even if somebody is in great pain from disease or from old age, either one of them can give pain. Hmm? Still, death itself, no. We hope, well, I may be old, but I can get a little better so I can move around a little bit. Hmm? That's what people usually think. Or maybe I'll take a bunch of tablets and this one will do that for my body, this one will do that for my body, and I'll maybe get a little better or be able to manage somehow. Hmm? But a devotee has to think about Krishna coming. Hmm? He's coming in the form of death, true enough, but he's coming to take us out of this jail, out of the pain of birth, out of the pain of old age, out of the pain of disease. So the intelligence has to kick in and look at it. Yes, the process of getting out of the material world, when we think about Krishna, the physical body may give us pain, but the end result is a wonderful one. So there's the condition. The condition is we have to be Krishna conscious. We have to serve so that we can remember Krishna. When you serve Krishna or you do something, especially chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the chances are very high you're going to remember the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is Krishna himself. So, Srila Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, Opulence of the Absolute, text 34. He explained it in text 34. That is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as said by the Lord himself. So in the first line of text 34 in chapter 10, Mrityu Sarva Haras Chaham. I am all devouring death. All devouring death. And Srila Prabhupada explains there at that particular, the purport. He says, as soon as a man is born, he dies at every moment. So actually, life is such that you'll be here for a certain time in the material world. And there's a number of breaths that's given to everyone. Sometimes people think that we are here for a certain time, and then after that time, then death comes. But it's been explained a little bit more that, yes, time is always there, but it's the number of breaths that's been given to a person for the life. And so when they take their last breath, then of course, the physical body quits, no longer functioning. The soul is taken by a subtle body to the next existence. That's normally what happens. That is why some people can die a little sooner, some people can die a little later or a lot later, but still the number of breaths don't change. That's the same. Like those who are meditating and trying to slow, or they've practiced how to slow their breathing. Some of them are in the mountains and places where it's isolated, especially the Himalayas. And then they just go on with long times of breathing very slowly and sitting in a lotus posture and other things that they do to control their senses. Some people live 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, and it's kind of hard to believe. Well, if you slow down the breath, then the number of breaths for that particular body for that time It's still being counted, but it's being counted slowly as time goes on. And that's why it can take a longer time then. If somebody breathes, and it's normally in Kali Yuga, about 100 years, a person leaves the body. Mm-hmm. And many times people are leaving their body even before they get to 100. Mm-hmm. The death is now coming faster than 100 years. But those who go through what I've just described, the slow breathing, can then go past the 100 years for whatever reason they want to do that, because they slow down their breathing. And so the breathing doesn't come as fast, and therefore they can go on. So it actually, yeah, there's time involved, but it's the number of breaths the person is supposed to take for that particular lifetime. That is set when the person is born. So when Srila Prabhupada said, as soon as a person is born, he's dying every moment, it means that as soon as the baby comes out, then the breaths that are supposed to be, he or the baby starts breathing, and therefore needs to be subtracted then. So every time, every day, the balance that's left. So what to do with the balance of the breaths? We have to make sure that we understand that our lives should be about doing what's necessary for the physical body. What's necessary for the physical body, because we have it, keep it in as good shape as you can. But doing the more important things, and that is serving Krishna and Krishna's devotees and Guru. That should be given the important position. And the material things should be involved with by ourselves to the extent that is necessary to keep the body in a healthy position. So sometimes people spend a lot of time trying to make money. Not that making money is bad. With bills to pay, a roof over our head, food on the table, that all costs money these days, the way life is. When these things are taken care of, then it is important to keep some amount, not a lot, for emergency situations, and the rest use it to serve Krishna. Why? Well, Krishna says, I'm all devouring death. When death comes, then everything gets taken away. Everything gets taken away. I remember there was a movie, and this guy, he's quite a popular actor in Hollywood. He was playing the role of a Christian priest, and the scene was in the temple. I mean, in the church. So then they were talking about having to stick with the Christians, so we were mentioning Jesus' name that you have to go to. But he was talking about death too. Now, true enough, it's a movie, it's lines, and I'm just thinking about it, and the way the guy was expressing about death coming, it was just too funny. I just started laughing about it. He says, yes, and death can come at any time. Death can come. Yes, death comes at any time. And everybody in the congregation, they weren't, I'm laughing about it now, but they weren't. They were scared. They were scared because the man was expressing that it can come at any time. It is true. They can't say it's not true, but they were scared. And that just brings us to the same point that's been described by Vidura, that is a frightful situation. But for devotees, whatever pain that's there involving death, we've got to remember that as long as we are doing service, the very end of it, when death comes, we are going to the Lord. We are getting out of the material world to the place where it is wonderful, it's blissful, and our original, everybody around us, every entity around us is loving. And have to struggle to live, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to work. You don't have to pay taxes. You don't have to go to school. You don't, all of these things. And you like parties. You're going to have a lot of them, one after another, in different situations. And the preparation is made for one wonderful pastime after another in serving the Lord. And in doing so, we ourselves enjoy very much. For example, you say, oh, but we're servants. Yes, we are. Servants of a servant of a servant. That is our position in the spiritual world. When we go there, that's the way we're going to be. But imagine being a servant of a very wealthy person, and Krishna has all the wealth. Say you are the chauffeur, the driver of this very rich person. Obviously, the rich person doesn't use a cheap car, but you drive a nice, expensive car. But you're a servant. You serve by driving this rich person. And the rich person in the morning says, okay, take me to this particular place. I have a meeting. You said, yes, sir. You get behind the steering wheel. You sit in the back. Expensive, wonderful car. You drive it, you drop him off. Come get me later on. I'll be here for about 6, 7, 8 hours. So come later to get me. Set up a time, okay? So then he's gone. What happens? Between that time, you can go anywhere with the vehicle. Do you think that as you're driving the vehicle, people are going to see you as a driver or as the owner? You see, you are enjoying a very expensive car, the comforts of it, even though you don't own it. But because you're serving a rich man, you get to use nice things. This is a situation with us in the spiritual world. Because we're serving Krishna, but the environment is wonderful. The prashadam is wonderful. The parties are there. So many, and then on top of that, and Krishna himself would also, because it's all a loving relationship, he's going to love you back. He's also going to do things, and he owns all the wealth. And so if when he's serving you, how wonderful that situation would be. He serves back as we're serving him. So there's a loving exchange. But we have to understand that he's the owner of everything. So even when he serves back, like the way he plays for the cowherd boys, the way he dances with the gopis, all of that, but he's still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That position, we, especially those of us that challenged him, envious of him, and wound up here in this material world, we have to remember that. We have to remember he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have to understand the Lord so we can go to the Lord. Understanding the Lord is Krishna consciousness. And as he explains in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 55, Bhaktya mama vijananti, yavan yaschasmi tatpata, tato mam tatpato gyadva, vishate tat anantaram. The translation is, one can understand me as I am, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. Only by devotional service. And then when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, then he can enter into the kingdom of God. So that is the transition for a devotee going back to the kingdom of God. But the condition is, we have to serve the Lord, understanding him as he is, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, through devotion. Devotional service only. So devotional service starts with instructions from the superiors, from Guru, and what they tell you, you take and you do, and you cooperate as much as possible. And actually, to grow even more, after you finish service, you should ask for more service. Sometimes when you see things that are there in the temple and it needs to be done, you go ahead and do it. You don't always have to be asked to do it. Because when you do things in that way, then it means your heart is into the Krishna consciousness, the service. Nothing is missed. Nothing is missed by the Lord in the heart. The Lord is actually literally Paramatma in our heart. And everything we do, he notices. Everything that we think of, he's aware of. And so when we chant the Lord's name, on our beads, and even throughout the day, we're mentioning the Lord's name or hearing things connecting with Supreme Personality of Godhead, lectures, bhajans, music, kirtans, and singing along with it. It puts our mind in Krishna. And at that way, we are actually free, become free from material conceptions, because life is material or spiritual. You have one or the other. The more you think about spiritual things, the more you do spiritual things, the less connected you are to material things. Physically, you won't do material things. Mentally, you begin to realize that the spiritual activities make us happier and happier from internal, from inside, from our hearts. Then we get less and less and less involved in material things or what we do to gratify our senses. And at that stage, there's a stage we can approach or get to, and that's called the Brahma Bhuta stage. In the Brahma Bhuta stage, person is free from material conceptions. And then the devotional service begins by just one hearing about the Lord, as we're doing now. When one hears about the Supreme Lord, this stage that we just talked about, that the Lord is now being thought of practically all the time by the devotee, that stage is reached, and then the material contamination like the greed for lust, for sense enjoyment, they would disappear. And as soon as the lust and those kind of desires disappear from the heart of the devotee, then the devotee becomes more attached to the service of the Lord. And by such attachment, then he becomes free from material contamination. And in that way, the Supreme Lord reveals himself even more. And now, all kinds of, not just knowing what's in the scriptures or even hearing somebody preaching, but as you're reading or hearing, there are other things about life that gets revealed and gets connected to what you're hearing. And that's exciting, it's more exciting, which means it's revelation that comes. Revelation that comes about spiritual life, about what the Lord is. So it says, in that stage of life, we just described as lust and desires and other desires, material desires disappear from the heart of the devotee. Then they can understand the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 55, Brahma Bhuta, the transcendental situation, Brahma Bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati. Samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim lavate param. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman, realizes Krishna, and becomes fully joyful. That joy comes from within. He never laments or desires to have anything. He's equally disposed to every living entity, because now they understand every living entity has a soul as well as a super soul inside of them. In that state, then Krishna says the person attains pure devotional service unto him. And pure devotional service is when you're serving, not expecting payback. When we go to our jobs, that's employment, we're expecting to be paid at a certain point. But serving from our hearts, not expecting any payback, and not stopping the service. Ahoitiki apatiyata, not stopping and not expecting any kind of payback from it. That is what opens our heart, and then we become more and happier and happier and happier from inside. It's not external things that make us happy, external material things. When we involve ourselves in chanting and chanting steadily and more focused mind, then, excuse me, and the happiness will come from within. Gradually it comes. And then when the person begins to feel that way, then even though we're in the material world and there's pain of disease and so on and there, we won't worry too much about that, because our minds are connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we know it's only a matter of time that this frightful death would come, but it's just a transition for the Lord's devotees to go see him. So we're not in a situation that's that bad. Those who are in the material world suffering but don't have a chance to go to the spiritual world, their situation is more difficult. They may not realize that. They may try to do more things to try to be happy from material things, but they will not really be happy. At best, it's temporary. Whatever they say they enjoy is temporary. Why? Well, it's explained that Hiranyakashipu, a great demon, he performed a severe type of austerity for material benefit. And even in doing so, the type of austerity he went through caused a lot of distress throughout the universe. Lord Brahma, the personality who is the chief within the universe, even he became disturbed, and the demigods were disturbed. And so they went with Lord Brahma to see Hiranyakashipu and find out why he was engaged in such severe austerity. Hiranyakashipu did not want to die. That was his reason. He wanted not to be conquered by anyone, not to be attacked by old age or disease. He didn't want to be harassed by any opponent. He wanted to be the absolute ruler of the entire universe. So with this desire, he went to the Mandara mountain, the valley, and then he got himself set to perform severe austerity, standing on his toes and his head and hands pointing up, hardly breathing. He started this. And he was determined. And he went on with the austerities, and the effect of the austerities is explained that it made the universe begin to be very warm and uncomfortably warm. And that's what got the demigods to approach Lord Brahma. Because it feels like there's a blazing fire now in the planets where we live, in the whole universe. And everybody, the birds, the beasts, the demigods themselves, the people, everybody was suffering. It became too hot from Hiranyakashipu's, the effect of his austerities. So Hiranyakashipu did not want to die. He said to Lord Brahma, please make me immortal. Lord Brahma says, I will die myself. I cannot give you what I don't have. And so Hiranyakashipu started thinking, well, then I will have to just do it in such a way that I can become immortal piece by piece. So then he asked Lord Brahma, give him benedictions, not to be killed by any living entity. Now that covers a whole lot of people, the living entities. They can't kill him. He asked for that. Not to be killed in any place, covered or uncovered, not to die in the daytime or nighttime, not to be killed by any weapon, not to be killed on land or in the air, not to be killed by any human being, animal, demigod, any living entity, living or even non-living. To all of that, he thought he really covered everything. And then he prayed for supremacy over the entire universe and requested that the 8 mystic cities, how to get bigger, smaller, or get things from another universe, and so all of that he wanted. So in his mind, he had covered it all. And true enough, no living entity in the material world, he already had said, could kill him. So basically, if nobody's going to kill him, and he has all of these, and he says, well, I can live then. That's my definition of immortality. But the Lord cannot be cheated. As Srila Prabhupada says, but the Lord killed him because the Lord is, and I don't know whether he meant it as a joke or whether, Srila Prabhupada not normally, he jokes sometimes, but he says, Krishna is a little more intelligent. Krishna is a lot more intelligent, but Srila Prabhupada meant that no matter how so that he could not be killed in all kinds of situations that he covered, that Krishna will find a way to get rid of him. Demigods are Krishna's devotees, and they wanted, to get away from this particular person because he was controlling them and he was also abusive. Very, very, very abusive. Mm-hmm. So Hiranyakashipu finally got killed. He wasn't killed in the daytime. He didn't want that. He wasn't killed at night, but he was killed just before night. That is dusk. That time. He wasn't killed in the air. He wasn't killed on land. Krishna put him on his lap. He wasn't killed by a human being or animal. Actually, there was fear from him because his brother Hiranyaksha had been killed by the Lord in the form of an animal. So that's why he made sure that he put a little animal to kill me. So Krishna can't even come looking at animals to kill him. So Krishna came half man, half animal, because that is not part of the list. So when Krishna wants to protect his devotee, and he protected his devotee Prahlad, who happened to be the son of Hiranyakashipu, and he was abusing his son too. So when we stick to Krishna consciousness, and we help other people to begin their journey also through the royal path of devotion, Krishna will be there for us, just like he was there for Prahlad. Even the biggest demon cannot do things to disturb us to the point that we're out, because he has already said in Bhagavad Gita that, Arjuna, you declare it, my devotee will never perish. Krishna himself will come. Death is a frightful situation, but for devotee, that's Krishna disguised as death coming to take us back home. So that, as we're thinking that death may be frightful, we also should think that there is the situation for us, as long as we remember Krishna, that death is actually Krishna coming to take us out of this more suffering condition into a condition where we won't suffer anymore. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful class and some amazing points. And especially this topic of death on the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, I think is very opportune. So thank you for shedding light on it, explaining the purpose of death, and actually seeing death coming upon us as the Lord coming to us and taking us back. That was, I think, at least for me, was my takeaway from this class. So thank you so much. I would like to ask devotees if any questions, any comments, clarification, or a takeaway. Please do unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put it in the post and we can definitely read it out. Any thoughts, any takeaways would be nice. If we can hear a takeaway from the devotees, that would be awesome. Just going down the list so that I don't miss anyone here. But for me, definitely, we've heard it, even growing up as a Christian, we have heard that. We've heard it being as a, practicing devotee. But then again, it's never enough, I think, to hear it over and over again, because the mind is such a rascal, that it's so nice to hear that here Vidur is saying the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time has approached us all. So when death is coming upon us, it is not a bad thing, but it's how we can change our consciousness to see that the Lord is coming to us in the form of death to take us back. I think that was a very powerful, and for me at least, a very powerful learning to how to see death from a different point of view. So that was one takeaway. Yes, go ahead.
It's important to realize that people don't like to talk about death, actually. Because that's everything that you work for, you lose. What's one thing. And devotees should simply not be attached to material things, not be attached. Use it for the service of the Lord. Raise your children if you're a Grihastha. Raise your children, you and your spouse should also be God conscious. Raise the children to be God conscious. Right from the beginning, when even they are playful, they should somehow be pulled into doing things that connect with Krishna consciousness in their own small way. So like that, little by little by little, they will develop, and they'll be, of course, bring them to the temple, and they'll develop in Krishna consciousness. And then later on, when this situation of death is coming, then all devotees have to understand, yes, it's painful, but to the physical body, and the soul is going to be released, and we can go home. We can go home. So we need to practice what it takes to go home, and that is loving devotional service to devotees, to Guru, and to the deities. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Just a humble reminder, as devotees, if you have any questions, any takeaways, any reflection, please
Dear
do
Krishna.
so. Yes, oh, there's something over here from.
Dear Krishna Prabhu has put something
Yes,
in
I
chat.
see that. Wonderful class, how to truly draw inspiration from Srila Prabhupada's life, the way he lived and the way he left. I might think he is Srila Prabhupada, a special empowered soul, but so he could do what he did, but I cannot. Yes, absolutely. Actually, this point that you made there, Krishna, is really powerful, because if we look at Srila Prabhupada's life, and today being such an amazing day, and I'm so glad that we can all come together this evening for Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day. The way Srila Prabhupada left his life was just amazing in the time of death. He was just he was literally translating Bhagavatam with his last breath. I mean, until his last breath, he was still translating Srimad Bhagavatam. So he looked at death as Krishna's service. I think that's what's coming to my mind. Like he looked at death as Krishna's service, that I am giving this body to the Lord. I'm going to do it until my last breath, because then the Lord can come take me. That's exactly what his mood was really, really powerful.
As a matter of fact, if you
Yes,
want,
please.
just to add to this, so I've been listening to the Srila Prabhupada memories released to him by his disciples, and one of them was talking about this thing that you just mentioned, that even at the time that he was getting ready to leave the body, he still was every ounce that was left of the body, he was still trying to translate the books to serve the Lord in that way. And one of the devotees that was there at the time, he said he used to just use a dictaphone, speak to it, and then and so on. But he couldn't even, he was so weak, he couldn't even handle that. So another devotee had to hold the dictaphone, over close to his mouth so he could speak. And he said, the devotee said, I forget who said that, but he said he was so weak that he couldn't turn himself, like normally when we sleep, and after a while he just, we just turn. He couldn't even do that. But of course, the body, once it's lying down, it has to turn too. So at that time, he would actually motion to the devotees, and they would gently turn him to a different position. That's how weak he was. But still, in that position, he was serving as best as he could, thinking about the Supreme Personality of God and thinking about the service of the books, and he was still translating at that time.
Amazing.
Good lesson for us. Yep. To learn.
Yeah, in fact, I was reading a nice quote. I think it was by Mahatma Das Prabhu or Bhakti Swami or one of the gurus. They said that if we have not read Srila Prabhupada's books and Srila Prabhupada's life, we don't know Srila Prabhupada. It's a very powerful statement that he said that. If we have not read his books and about him, then we don't know Srila Prabhupada. I thought that was a very powerful statement that he was sharing. I'm trying to think which of the gurus said that. I don't remember. I just saw it yesterday, but it was powerful. Thank you for that nice sharing there, Krishna. It really made me think more and more how our lives are just completely at the hands of Krishna, drawing our life towards Srila Prabhupada's, our inspiration from Srila Prabhupada, absolutely. Really making it completely Krishna conscious. Amazing point. Thank you so much. Are there any other points from devotees? Any other reflections? Any other thoughts? If there isn't, just a humble reminder that we will gather together this evening at the temple at 6 o'clock for Srila Prabhupada's disappearance program. We request devotees, especially aspiring and initiated devotees, if you can please come out. It's open to all, obviously, but definitely more important for aspiring and initiated devotees to participate and be in attendance for this evening's program for Srila Prabhupada. Very, very important that we all come together this evening at 6 o'clock. And please do be on time, because it's going to be a very tight schedule because of the timing that Srila Prabhupada left at 7:20. So we got to fit everything in from 6 to 7:20. So please do join us. Until then, Vanchakraptibhyascha Kritasundavevcha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Have a wonderful day and looking forward to seeing all of you this evening. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.